This episode of History Saver is brought to you by Addressing Gettysburg. Addressing Gettysburg is a podcast that shares great experiences, quality programs, awesome guests, and is a welcoming community for all who love Gettysburg. So join in with host Matt Calorie and find out why Addressing Gettysburg is one of the top-rated podcasts online today. You can find them on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, Podbean, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, right here on YouTube. So check out Addressing Gettysburg today, where history is not boring. Thank you to Addressing Gettysburg for sponsoring this video.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
So welcome to History Across America. We are kicking off the 2024 tour of History Across America from right here on that first day, just outside of the city of Franklin, Tennessee. Now, if you're interested in the Battle of Franklin, well, there's probably something you're missing, and that is the prior battle here in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And you could come here to Spring Hill. There's an awesome gift shop here. You're able to see a cool historic home. I'm going to kind of let you guess where I'm at, because if you do your research on this place, you'll want to come. And you cannot understand the Battle of Franklin without understanding the actions that occurred here in November 1864. So let's head out on the field. I'm going to explain a little bit to you about what kicks off the Battle of Franklin here in Spring Hill, Tennessee. Come see this place for yourself. It's an awesome testament to what the American Battlefield Trust does and the Battle of Franklin Trust. Go visit, and they're right here on YouTube. Go visit them here. Subscribe to their channels here. Go support them, because you could clearly see where your support for the American Battlefield Trust and the Battle of Franklin Trust actually comes. So we are right here at Ripa Villa in Spring Hill, Tennessee. September 1864, the city of Atlanta falls. That leaves Confederate General John Bell Hood scurrying to figure out what the Confederacy is going to do. What can he do to actually help revive this situation? You got William T. Sherman, who's marching his famous march to the sea, and while he's doing that, Confederate General John Bell Hood does his march to Tennessee. So we are right here today in Spring Hill. Everyone knows about the Battle of Franklin. They know, if you're a Civil War scholar, what happens at the Battle of Franklin. It's a vicious fight there. But what they do not often understand is how they get to Franklin. Well, it really all culminates right here where I'm at now in Spring Hill. November 1864, General John Bell Hood is going to come into this area where I'm now standing, and he is not expecting any resistance. That is because General Nathan Bedford Forrest and his cavalry have failed yet again to make a proper recon of the areas ahead of the advancing Confederate Army. General Schofield has been ordered by William T. Sherman and U.S. Grant to head to Tennessee. John Bell Hood's objective and his train of thought is capturing the city of Nashville. Nashville is a jewel to both armies, and Hood thinks if he captures Nashville, he could throw another dagger into the heart of the Union Army. So William T. Sherman Grant tells Schofield, head towards help defend Nashville. And as Hood's army is coming in, him and Schofield's army are going to meet right here along the Columbia Pike in Spring Hill. and there's going to be a vicious fight here. A lot of people don't think anything happened here. That is absolutely wrong. Around 600 soldiers are going to lose their life on this field, or they're going to be wounded or captured. And, well, the blunder that takes place here is that even though the Confederate Army gets within hundreds of yards of eyesight of the pike, and they're here to watch that road and keep the Union Army from going over that road and crossing and making their way back towards Nashville to better defend Nashville, nightfall falls and they fail. Why do they fail? Well, it's 4 years into this war that we call the American Civil War. Men are not in the best mindsets here. They've been through battles like Chickamauga, Gettysburg. They have been through Shiloh, Corinth. They have been through Chickamauga and the Atlanta campaigns, and they're tired. So the generals fail. Another problem is that everyone wants to be in charge on the Confederate side. Everyone on that Confederate side wants to be the big Indian in charge. And, well, it just, orders are getting mumbled and jumbled. So what ends up happening here in this location is that 20,000 Union troops up under Wagner are going to make their way right past Confederate lines, going back into Franklin, where they're going to entrench in some makeshift fortifications around the city of Franklin, and in a big semicircle, they're going to make their stand. Confederate troops here have no choice, under the command of John Bell Hood, to start making their way in this direction behind me towards the city of Franklin. So this is what kicks off that whole ordeal that is to become known as the Battle of Franklin. A lot of people miss this spot. Let's give you a glimpse of the field real quick before we get out of here and get to Franklin. So as you can see right here, this is an interpretive plaque over the field here in Spring Hill. Now I want you to notice something. This logo right here, the American Battlefield Trust. This land was helped to be preserved by the American Battlefield Trust. They're getting back this land for you to learn from. In no place it will be more evident than I've ever been except here in Spring Hill and where you're about to see in Franklin. This was all land that had different organizations and businesses out here. Well, the American Battlefield Trust saved it. It's being preserved for the Battle of Spring Hill. Now, as the director or the museum curator just told me inside of the gift shop, if you want to know where the center of this battlefield is, go to Target. Directly to my front, over that ridge line, there is a Target there, believe me. You're standing on a battlefield in the middle of Target. That is why the American Battlefield Trust is so important. The Battle of Franklin Trust is so important. They have been doing an outstanding job preserving these battlefields, preserving this history. And you can come here, see these interpretive plaques, talking about 3 p.m. November 29, 1864, John M. Schofield realized that his command was in great danger. And he's going to realize that right here. And then as you can see, we're right here in Spring Hill. November 29, 1864 is when this event's going to occur. Schofield's troops are going to pull back to the city of Franklin. Hood is going to have no choice but to hit them in Franklin. But this whole event starts November 29, 1864. November 30th, 1864, of course, the Battle of Franklin happens. And this is what is going to lead directly to that event. Pretty cool to stand here where a lot of people actually miss. Now also, if you want to come here, there is an awesome home here you can tour. We don't have time to actually do this today, but you could come tour this home. These are where Hood is going to lay his feet on the pavement at, well, dirt rather, but Hood is going to be here in this home. And if you can see right here, Ripa Villa, Spring Hill Battlefield, preserved forever by the American Battlefield Trust. Come here, check it out for yourself, and see Ripa Villa. So what an awesome way to kick off this History Across America Tour 2024 from right here at Ripa Villa in Spring Hill. And now let's go to the battlefield at the Battle of Franklin. All right, guys, welcome to the eastern flank of the Franklin battlefield. We're on the morning of November the 30th, 1864, and during that afternoon, tons of Mississippi Confederate troops are going to make their way across this field into the jaws of death. They're going to come across this field, and there's going to be a hellacious amount of artillery fire rain down upon them. I'm talking solid shot, K shot, any type of shot you can imagine is laid on these Mississippi men as they're making their way across this field right in front of the Carton Plantation here in Franklin. This is where the Battle of Franklin is really going to get underway as Hood's men begin their advance on the Federal troops inlaid just over these hills. So, yeah, with that being said, let's head to the city of Franklin, where the middle of this battle is going to culminate. So before we head into the city of Franklin, I do want to highlight one thing here. The work of the American Battlefield Trust and the Battle of Franklin Trust. At one point, some of the land you see around me was a golf course. But thanks to these two organizations and their constant, persistent nature of preserving this battle for others to learn from, this battlefield is now, in this portion of the eastern flank, saved, and well, you can come enjoy it. Let's go ahead to the middle of Franklin and check out the middle of the battlefield there. So we're back, and we're actually standing in the middle of the battlefield here in Franklin. We're at the Carter House Visitor Center. You guys got to come check this place out. The Battle of Franklin Trust here in Franklin, Tennessee does an amazing job, and they're steadily doing an amazing job in the preservation of the Franklin battlefield. Now, we were at Spring Hill a little bit back talking about what happened to initiate this battle at Spring Hill. But as you're here, they got a little museum set up inside. There's also the Lots House, and then a plantation we're going to see a little bit later on. But let's get a quick glance here, tell you a little bit about what happens in the portion of this field, and then we'll continue on. So this is a little bit more than a trunk, as some of you guys probably refer to this as incorrectly. This is called a limber chest. This was part of the artillery guns, the cannons, and this is what held your rounds and a little bit of your implementation, like your fuses for the cannon. And this particular limber chest was found in front of the Carter House as the Federal Army retreated back to Nashville. And if you look at the back of the limber chest, there is some battle damage here on it itself, which is pretty neat to see. And you can see the copper protection piece on the top, and up underneath it the exposed wood. So pretty neat to see this relic. But this isn't the only relic here. You also have the Carters is going to have a cotton gin roughly across the pike from where we are now, and that cotton gin is going to be torn down by some of the Federal units to help reinforce their fortifications along the Columbia Pike. And these are pieces of the planks that come off of that cotton gin, and you can clearly see bullet holes inside of them. Or maybe that's a square hole. That may not be a bullet hole, but you can see near or less pieces of the cotton gin that's no longer there. But a lot of this cotton gin was torn away to help build the breastworks for the Federal troops that is just roughly to the west of my location right now. And then you've got the story of Todd Carter here, who was a son in the Carter family. And he made it home. And this is a interesting story if you're familiar with the Battle of Franklin. He dies here in this battle. And he was shot down. He was struck 9 times. He clung to life. He was carried home by his family and died 2 days after the Battle of Franklin, where he lived. This is probably one of my favorite stories of the entire American Civil War, the story of Mr. Todd Carter. And if you're not familiar with it, you need to come here to Franklin, support the Battle of Franklin Trust, support the American Battlefield Trust, because you could clearly see the work they're doing here, and learn about the story of Todd Carter for yourself. And these are some of the relics you can see here, some spurs. There is a wallet, a sword, and he had this sword when he was wounded. This was his wallet that was saved after his death by the family. He had this here during the battle. Then he had some spurs. Being the captain, he had spurs. And these are pieces of the spur here. And then you have one of the bullets that was here. This was removed from Todd's head. This is a .58 caliber Williams cleaner bullet. It was lodged just up under his left eye, and his family saved it. So that is one of the bullets that helped claim the life of young Todd Carter, who was 20 years old, a captain. And it's a tragic story. He dies in a battle literally in his front and backyard. So pretty cool. So in addition, you got some placards you can read when you come here, and there's a lot of things. There's something here that a lot of people don't know about. This is the actual Confederate States of America seal. Just like the president has a seal, this is the seal for the Confederate States of America. A lot of people don't know there was one. Well, it's clearly right here. And yeah, you can see it here for yourself. Here's a few other relics here that come from the battlefield here in Franklin. Several bullets here. Some from the Columbia Pike, a Federal Reserve line near the Holt House. You've got some carbine rounds here that come from the West Carter Garden, and then some from the Carter Garden East here, which is going to be some primers, buckles, some knapsack hooks, and the butt plate off of a musket. And also some more over here, which is really neat to see. So there's a belt plate there for the U.S., part of the U.S. soldiers who were in this position. So you can actually see the belt plate, and then the bayonet, frog tip, and some other hooks and different gear, and then the ramrod here as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things to see here. So make sure you step in here and take a minute before you head out on the battlefield. All right, so here we are in the slap dead middle of where some of the most vicious fighting on November the 30th, 1864 is going to take place here in Franklin. Now at one point, what you see around me, well, it wasn't here. There was all kinds of houses and some businesses and different things here, and this has all been kept preserved now by the Battle of Franklin Trust and the American Battlefield Trust. But let's turn you around so you can get a glimpse at what you're looking at. So first thing you may notice here is this small little earthen mound. These represent the positions of troops such as the 44th Missouri, who were in this location on the battlefield on November the 30th, 1864. Now, John Bill Hood and the Confederate Army let the Federals, 20,000 of them to be exact, walk right past them in Spring Hill. And as they walked past them with Spring Hill, they pushed back the disposition of Franklin, trying to build up the defensive positions of the city of Nashville. Well, here Hood is going to meet a stiff resistance of the Federal Army up under Wagner, who has been sent here by Schofield. His men are going to entrench right here with earthworks. These earthworks were anywhere from 1 to 2 foot high. They were not very big, but they were reinforced on the top with boards and planks and whatever they could find. A lot of it coming from the cotton gin, which sat just across the road there in the distance. You're going to have artillery guns here. You're going to have these men entrenched in this position, ready to fight back the advancing Confederate Army. And Hood has got a debacle on his hands. Patrick Cleburne has a debacle on his hands. Patrick Cleburne knows that the situation here is not going to be good, but he's going to follow orders. And unfortunately, 4 generals, one including Patrick Cleburne, is going to be killed near our position. Now, the Carter farm was in the specific area of the Columbia Pike, and young Tar Carter, the captain, who is 20 years old, is going to be killed literally in his front yard. And he's going to die here a week or 2 weeks later. So, very tragic story. But yeah, let's take a look at some of the things that's here. So the Carter farm is still here today. You can still see it. And as you can tell right behind me, you can still see the marks of this battle on the Carter farm. The outbuildings of the farm here clearly still have the visible signs of the Battle of Franklin. This side of the building is peppered with just probably what I would call musket shot, K-shot, and whatever else was being thrown into these positions. Now, not only has that been peppered, you can also see remnants of the battle damage throughout all buildings of the home, including this structure, which contains hundreds of holes made from the rounds of muskets from both Federal and Confederate, who are attacking this position in one of the most hellacious battles that you will ever see during the American Civil War. Could you imagine just standing here as a resident of Franklin in one of these homes and hearing this battle rage? Now, unfortunately, as we make our way around the outbuildings of the home, we don't have time today to go inside of the Carter house here in Franklin because, quite frankly, well, we've got a lot of road to cover, and I'm hoping to make it to St. Louis as I'm shooting this before nightfall, which I don't think is going to happen. But you can come here and see these positions that this battle fiercely raged between Wagner and generals like Cleburne and General Hood, who's desperately trying to take a stab back at the Union because he's the guy, after all, that loses Atlanta. So he's trying to make up for lost time here. And this is truly a remarkable battlefield and remarkable sight. Now, as we walk inside of this home here, or a part of the outbuilding here, this is part of the slave cabins here. Unfortunately, it was part of the war, but it just gives you a glimpse at what some of these outbuildings look like as the battle was here. One bed, one room, sleep there, you cook there, and you live here. Yeah, it is a dark, wet, and I can attest right now a very musty smell. And this is where you lived. So as we walk across the remnants of the battlefield here, I wanted you to take note of something. If you see right in front of us, directly to my right, all around us is modernization. At one time, none of this was here. All of this around the Carter Farm was built up. It is thanks to organizations such as the Battle of Franklin Trust and the American Battlefield Trust, as you saw earlier in this series at Spring Hill, that places like this can be saved for people to come learn from these battlefields. And speaking of that, right in front of me marks the positions of the federal lines along the Columbia Pike. There's a rock path here today, and the reason why we know these were their federal positions is because archaeological excavations were conducted here, and they found remnants of it. The breastworks here, as I said earlier, were 1 and 2 foot high. They were not 4, they were not 5, they were not 7 foot high here, like some people think. In these positions, you got to think about it. They were putting these up in a hurry. They wanted to get these up because they knew Hood's army was bearing down on them. So what they ended up doing was digging a little bit of the earth out and then reinforcing this rock path you see here, where these earthworks once stood, with lumber and boards and different things that they had come across, including the Carter cotton gin. So it would be ripped apart and used here in these positions to help fortify these positions so that the Federal Army could put the defensive on Hood's Confederate attack. Coming along the road you see right in front of me, at the time known as the Columbia Pike, now known as Columbia Avenue. So General George Thomas Ruger is going to have his troops in this area, and directly across the pike is where elements of Kentuckians who are fighting for the Federal Army are going to have their guns. And you can see those positions right across the street here. Buchanan's dominating the landscape. Now, as we're along the Columbia Avenue, the Carter Farm is directly to my front. The Kentucky battery positions are directly to my right, and my back is turned from the direction where Hood's army would have been advancing. As you look through and down the Columbia Avenue or Columbia Pike right behind me, it's not a flat field. Much like Gettysburg, it's rolling hills. This portion of the country in Tennessee is the mountains. This is where you have the Great Smoky Mountains that begin to take shape here. So this isn't flat terrain, as a lot of people would think it is. So you have these rolling hills, and that's going to play a vital key role into what's going to take place here in Franklin. The terrain is the most important part of any battlefield in the world. I don't care what country, what time frame you're in, the battlefield terrain is what chooses where the battle takes place and what happens during that battle. So that's going to occur right here in Franklin. And as you can look through on the Columbia Pike here, you see that terrain, much like Gettysburg, begin to take shape, the rolling hills. And we're gonna go right across the pike here and take a look at these guns and take a look near the spot where General Patrick Cleburne fell here during the battle at Franklin. All right, traffic's a little horrible through here, but as you can see, the Battle of Franklin Trust, along with the American Battlefield Trust and organizations, have put up markers dominating, showing the U.S. Army line here. So Hood's men is going to be advancing from this direction. The Kentuckians are going to have their guns right across the street. Patrick Cleburne is going to fall in this area of the battlefield. So as we make our way across, we're going to get a good look at these artillery pieces up close and personal. And these are purchased by the Battle of Franklin Trust. As I'm mentioned in this video several times, I will keep mentioning, because I can't tell you how important these guys are to the preservation of this site and their work that they are continuing to do here. So these are the guns that are illustrating the positions of 100th Ohio men and the 1st Kentucky. So these are the artillery guns that's going to be throwing the shell, the lead, the K-shot, the solid shot. Anything they could get out of these cannon barrels is going to be hurled at hoods of anti-Confederates. Ruger's men are going to be in this position. You're going to have other divisions here as well. Patrick Cleburne is going to be one of the generals killed in this position. Patrick Cleburne's one of my favorite generals of the American Civil War to study. He is commanding Alabama troops. That's where I'm from. And roughly somewhere in this area of the field is where he's going to be shot and he's going to be killed. Patrick Cleburne had 2 horses killed from up under him here at the Battle of Franklin. He knew his men were going into the jaws of death, and he knew it was going to be a vicious fight. 50% of his division would go down. And this is roughly somewhere in the spot around this area where he is going to take his fall. Here you've got George W. Gordon. And then you have Confederate dead and earthworks here. So George W. Gordon is going to be one of the 2,000 Confederate troops who are going to become casualties in this area, along with Patrick Cleburne. And this is going to be the site of their demise. And this is pretty cool. This is a newly acquired piece of ground here. It's only been here a handful of years, preserved in this manner. Across the street at one point was a Pizza Hut. I mean, if that doesn't say what the American Battlefield Trust and Battle of Franklin Trust does, well, I don't know what does. They saved this from being a Pizza Hut. I mean, come on. So you have the Carter Farm barn that we mentioned that is going to be in this position here as well. When they've done the archaeological excavations, they found the quarter post of the Carter Farm barn, and that is where a lot of Ruger's men are going to take boards from to put on the earthworks. And this is going to be the middle of this fight here. And this is the foundation that you see right in front of us. And somewhere in this area is also where Patrick Cleburne, as I said before, is going to fall. So I know that's a lot of information in a very short time, but you're going to have guys like Bard and Cox and Schofield and Ruger. All these guys are going to be in this position fighting off the Confederate attacks from guys like Cleburne and Gordon. And 4 Confederate generals will fall somewhere in this vicinity. This is the middle of this hellhole of a battle. This is literally the middle of hell. So if you come to Franklin and you miss this spot, you've missed the Battle of Franklin. If you come to Franklin and you miss Spring Hill, you've missed the Battle of Franklin. So let's get out of here. Let's head to the next location, and I'm going to try not to get hit by a car. So this is the Carton Plantation, and this is going to be home to James McGavick and his family as the Battle of Franklin occurs on November 30th, 1864. On the morning of December the 1st, 1864, as the sun begins to rise over the now blood-covered front yard of this home, there's going to be dead, dying, and wounded everywhere you see directly in front of me in this location. These men are going to be brought here, as this is now a makeshift Civil War hospital, a field hospital for surgeons to operate, and this is going to be a literal hell on earth. So the home you see was built in the 1820s by the McGavick family. Around 1815, his son Randall had a first, which was a first brick home that was built here, and then they started construction of this home. December the 1st, 1864, the area that you see, the porch, everywhere in this front yard of this home is just scattered with dead, dying, and wounded. This is a literal hell on earth. And as you can see, well, today, thanks to restoration and preservation of organizations such as the Battle of Franklin Trust, you could come see this home as it appeared in 1864. So if you can imagine, there's more to Civil War combat than just being a soldier in the Army. If you're a civilian during the American Civil War, over 600,000 dead bodies and wounded and missing are turning up. Almost every family in America is hit some type of way from the American Civil War. And for the family that lived here, their Civil War is going to come in the form of the morning of December the 1st, 1864, as their home is now transformed from a peaceful plantation to a literal yard soaked of blood. They're going to have both Federal and Confederate troops who are going to be making their way to this location. Mississippi troops just in front of the house on November the 30th, 1864, as this battle starts. They're immediately going to find their way to this home as they're struck down by many of the artillery shells hurled at them by Federal troops right off the bat at the start of this battle. So today the home is really cool to see. Unfortunately, I'm not going in because I just don't have the time. If you guys want to see more places, I gotta make some sacrifices. But if you go in this home today, and I'll try to put up some footage here from the American Battlefield Trust or someone of the blood-stained floors that's inside of the home. You could come here, tour this home today, and see that for yourself. On the staircase of the home, in every room of the home, up to 40 men were strewn across the floors, awaiting their turn to have limbs amputated or bullets taken out of their body. I mean, this is a literal, really bad, I mean, this is a really bad place to be. And the citizens that live in this area are helping take care of the wounded. And could you imagine just living here at this plantation, waking up one morning to a normal morning, nothing out of the ordinary, and to waking up the next day and your life has been turned upside down, inside out, and now your home has the mark it still does on History Now? I mean, just take a minute and think about that. So we're making our way from the front of the Carton plantation, and we're going to make our way back around the rear as we leave the grounds here, because I want to show you a very famous spot that was here that history is going to make a big mark on December the 1st and November the 30th of 1864. The back porch you see right behind me of the plantation is going to see 4 Confederate generals brought up by a wagon and placed right here in this approximate area of the home. And we're going to go see the exact spot. So it's going to be right here on November 30th, December the 1st, 1864, where 4 Confederate generals are going to be brought here at the plantation, and they're going to be placed on his front porch. They were bought by wagon, and they were placed here side by side. One of those generals is Patrick Cleburne. 3 of those generals are going to be sent home, and then 1 will be buried elsewhere. But we're walking in the exact spot of where those bodies were placed, and where hundreds of men sought refuge from their wounds and also died here. Pretty solemn place to be. So, one of my favorite things to study about the American Civil War is the civilian aspect of the war and what impact did it make on the civilians. Where we're going to find that impact written in stone right here in Franklin. So one of my favorite things to study about the American Civil War isn't only the battles, it isn't only the command structure, it isn't the tactics, it is also the civilian aspect of the American Civil War. With the war claiming around 600,000 American lives, where are all these soldiers being put? Good question. Well, Union soldiers were often buried in places known as national cemeteries. Arlington is a prime example of that today. Arlington was once home of General Robert E. Lee. You'll see Arlington coming up very soon again on the channel. But here in Franklin, what happened to the Union dead? A lot of them made their way to the cemetery now at Stones River. But what about the Confederate dead? That's another story. Confederate dead were not buried usually with Union soldiers. They have to have their own cemetery set up, which is why you see a lot of Confederate memorial cemeteries. Well, here after the Battle of Franklin, the McGavitt family, well, they had a situation. Their home had just been witness to thousands of men losing their lives. Their home had been turned into a hospital. Their floors are now bloodstained. But for the city of Franklin, there's bodies laying everywhere. What did they do with them? For the next several years, Mr. McGavick and 3 other gentlemen are going to establish a cemetery here in Franklin for the Confederate war dead. Here at the McGavitt Family Cemetery, also known as the Confederate Cemetery today. Here are 1,400 or just over 1,400 Confederate soldiers. A lot of these men are Mississippi men who died literally on the morning of November the 30th, on the afternoon of November the 30th. As they died, they were actually walking over their graves. They were walking over their future graves. And this is the exact field upon which they advanced into the jaws of death. By December the 1st, 1863, all 1,400 of these men buried in this cemetery lay dead here on this field and throughout the Battle of Franklin. And you will see a lot of Mississippi dead in this battlefield and in this cemetery because, well, right where I'm standing are where they met their demise. And they're buried right here. So the 4 men who helped establish this cemetery worked for 3 months retrieving the dead up and around Franklin. And they buried them here. One of those men died while he was doing this work for those 3 months. And he's also buried among the soldiers who he helped bury himself, which is a pretty, tragic story. But as you come in, you can see just in this spot, there are 230 men from Tennessee who were killed here in Franklin. And a lot of these men were actually known. They had their names recorded as these men who that helped establish this cemetery and bury these Confederate dead would take their names down in a journal, let's say, and they documented each man that they could that actually had identifications. At this time, a lot of these soldiers here in Franklin knew the guys that died, so they would mark their graves, their temporary graves on the battlefield with pieces of strong boxes or boards or whatever they could find, carve their name, their unit, whatever into it to identify that soldier. And they were able to identify a lot of these men because of that. See, right here we have 130 Missouri men who were killed here in Franklin. So yeah, the cemetery here is endless of all these men who died here during this battle. So the once little family cemetery grew by measures overnight. And for the next several years, men will be gathered and interned right here in their final resting spots. All right, so now you may know a little bit more about the Battle of Franklin and the Battle of Spring Hill. We have a lot more to see along this History Across America tour, and this is just the first stop. And let this place be a reminder of why organizations such as the American Battlefield Trust and the Battle of Franklin Trust are so important, because Franklin, Tennessee is a living testament to the ongoing work of both organizations in battlefield preservation. You can go pick up several items at battlefields.org from the American Battlefield Trust. You can subscribe here on YouTube. You can also subscribe to the Battle of Franklin Trust. And also don't forget to check out my buddy Project Past. James has some excellent videos from here in Franklin as well. We've got a lot more to see. We got to get back on the road. Next stop for us, who knows? But we're going to continue this History Across America tour, and we'll see you from the next place. Until then, keep preserving history and stay safe. We'll catch you down the road.